A lot of companies think they have a lead problem. They want more leads, they spend more money, they generate more demand, turn up the traffic. They go to the traffic store. And somehow things get worse, remarkably. My guest today lived through that exactly. And I think she's exposing that in lots of the clients that she works with and helps them solve those problems. One of her companies that she worked with went from 6 leads a month to more than 700. Marketing looked successful, but growth exposed something nobody wanted to admit. The business wasn't built to handle the success it had created. So, Lindsay Ellis joins me today to talk about what happened when growth exposes operational dysfunction. And I love how you coined that phrase, Lindsay. And it truly is. It's dysfunction. And in a most dysfunctional, especially families, they don't even recognize it. So, Lindsay, thank you for coining that phrase and welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
So, take us back to that company. You help them grow them from 6 leads, which is dismal, a month to more than 700. At what point did you realize the real problem wasn't lead generation anymore?
It happened really fast. We all hope in marketing that when you turn on that marketing machine that you're going to get all these leads.
Hmm.
And it doesn't. A lot of times things happen gradually. This happened really fast and we figured it out really fast. So they had put the money into digital for marketing, they'd put the money into new software, and all of a sudden all of these leads were coming in within, I would say, the first 30 days. I was like, what is happening? We have all of these leads. They're gold. They're not being touched. What we had done was qualify them between the sales qualified leads and the marketing qualified leads, meaning we had all these leads coming in to being hot leads. There were hot leads and warm leads. And sometimes it would take 7 days for them to be touched. What it exposed is there was one person who wasn't somebody who was experienced in being a lead coordinator. He was the marketing coordinator who would email the leads, call the leads back. If they seemed like they were good leads, he would forward them to the next step, which was the salesperson. If the salesperson wasn't on the road, because they were on the road a lot, they would get right back to that person. If not, it could be a couple of days before they got back to them. And all of a sudden, we had 800 leads, 1,000 leads, all these leads sitting in the pipeline that had not been touched. And then being on the executive team, I was like, wait a second, we have to pump the brakes here and we've got to talk about this. We have the brightest of this company sitting on this call, the chief revenue officer, the CEO, the head of the sales department, and we are dealing with all of these leads and not touching them. They're sitting in our pipeline and we're looking at them.
Yeah. What were they seeing on the surface? The leaders, what were they thinking was going on?
This is really interesting. And I think this happens with a lot of companies. I talk a lot about alignment because this is where you start to see that push and pull between sales and operations and marketing. All of a sudden,
Mhm.
everybody was blaming everybody. So we're really excited that marketing brought in leads, but that all of a sudden wasn't a celebration. It was marketing's bringing in these leads and they're not good leads. They're terrible leads. They're not quality leads. And marketing was going, wait a second. How can you say they're not quality leads when you haven't called them back or you haven't reached out to them? You're telling me that there's 1,000 leads sitting in the pipeline, but they're not quality. And we went through everything from it's the wrong content, it's the wrong type of lead to, okay, wait a second. I said, you guys, we need to take a step back. And I actually built them out the sales funnel so they could see what was happening. Here is what is happening with our leads. They're dropping into the CRM. This is the amount of days it takes before the coordinator might talk to them via email, via text, via phone call. Then it gets sent to the salesperson. Here's another delay. And this is what happens with the backlog versus what should be happening. And everyone went, you know what? You're right. This is a problem. We need to do something about it. Which next came here, my next step was saying, you guys, what you really need with this many leads, you have to make a decision. Either you need to pull back a little bit on your spend because you cannot handle this for a while till we put the infrastructure in, or we need to decide right now, do we have somebody on staff that is a lead coordinator that can be that first line of contact? And had to really explain to them. And this is what I say to every company out there. These leads coming in are gold. And you hear the term speed to lead all the time. It's so true. If you are not getting to those leads quickly, somebody else is. So I was explaining to them, look, these leads, the importance of these leads, I can't overstate. you have to have somebody, number one, that has the time and bandwidth to be able to get back to them, especially the hot leads right away. Number two, knows what they're doing. So understands how to qualify these leads, because obviously you go from talking to a lead that might not be qualified. If somebody doesn't know how to qualify them, then they're sending through leads that are not quality leads. And then you still have a problem. So you want somebody that understands the importance of these leads, that has dealt with them before, that has the bandwidth, and then understands the company and is able to send it to the next step. But the next step has to be ready too. So if you're going to send it to the sales team, and this is a lead that's now been qualified, we now have to work as a sales and marketing and operations team and say, how quickly can the sales team get to it? Or do we need another step in between that salesperson and that lead coordinator? So we just took a step back and talked about what the process needs to look like, who they needed to hire, how they were going to get to these leads. And in came the job description for the lead coordinator, which was going to be the first step.
So you mentioned alignment, and we see this all the time where marketing is busting their budgets sometimes, and they're busting their butts to get those leads in the funnel, and they know what a qualified lead is. And you mentioned the alignment. So how did you get the team, the sales team and the marketing team to be aligned? And what was the pushback? What was the pressure that they were feeling on the ground between those two teams?
So like I said before, it was a lot of friction at first. There was a lot of back and forth. So we had to first kind of quash that friction and say, hey guys, you know what? We're on the same team. And what was really helpful was that this all came up on an executive leadership call. So you didn't just have sales and marketing kind of duking it out on here. You had
Uh-huh.
almost like a committee of people. So you had the head of HR, and you had the CEO of the company, and you had the COO. And so therefore you had a sounding board for everybody. And what we did, this company in particular had a great system that they used to where they assigned people different things during each call. Everybody had their goals, and then every week they reported back on them. And so what we did was we said, okay, what are the things that have to be done to get everybody in alignment? And we started to set up meetings. So sales and marketing, we're going to start to have weekly meetings and start to put the new process in place. And every time that they would have a meeting, they would put together a new part of the process, something that was going to help to move the company forward by being able to deal with these leads in an efficient way, and then come back and report it to the broader team. And should there be any friction that came from that, bring up what that friction was to the broader team so everybody could talk about it. And this took, gosh, I would say at least 3 months before everybody was on the same page. It was a lot of back and forth. It was a lot of putting things down on paper and making sure that whatever process was put into place was something that was realistic and repeatable, and that everybody agreed they could make work from their department. And that's how we got alignment. It was having the broader team be able to weigh in on it. And to me, I will tell you what, when you're dealing with alignment, I don't know about your experience of dealing with these teams, but I have really found that having a cross-functional team that's not just made up of the people that are having the friction really helps.
I was going to ask you, who came up with the process? Was it that team? Because that's where the gold happens, when you have people from the different areas of the business together solving the problem, instead of, like you said, marketing, sales, duking it out. You've got to have a moderator. There's someone else in between that also benefits from probably the people that are onboarding the customers. They have a say in it too, because they want a certain kind of customer also that marketing may not know about and sales may not know about, unless the salespeople are doing the onboarding themselves.
And
What
that's
kinds of
where I was going to say, that's where what was happening was marketing was going back and meeting with their team. Sales was meeting with their team. They were coming together to put together the process that they thought was going to work going forward, and then bringing it to the broader team. And everybody, even though sales and marketing were spearheading what this was going to look like, it was the broader team that was then able to weigh in and help to add to it, be the devil's advocate if there was something that wasn't going to work. Obviously, where I talk about it being the broader team, the CFO is on there. So there's a money aspect to it when you're talking about needing to hire additional headcount. There's a budget area where he had to weigh in on that too. So you had your sales and marketing spearheading and then everybody else that was adding value.
What kinds of arguments or pushback did that came up in those 3 months?
So one of the biggest things, and this is the hardest for me to overcome too, was we're not ready to have a lead coordinator. We're not ready for that.
Mm.
We're not in that position. And I was like, wait a second, if we're not ready to have somebody deal with these leads, then we're not ready to have these leads. We've got to think of
They
that.
wanted the leads, though. They
Right,
wanted the
and
leads.
everybody does, right? Everyone thinks if you build it, they will come kind of thing. If you turn it on and the
Mhm.
leads come, then the business is gonna grow. Just what we're talking about here, you're exposing that organizational dysfunction. Leads are getting left and not being dealt with. So that was the biggest thing was we're not ready. And I kept saying, what do you mean we're not ready? We need other things. We have other positions we really need, but we probably want a social person and a content person that's in-house and a new project manager. And I was going, but that's all good, except for the fact that you're talking about hiring people to drive more leads. And we're already not dealing with the leads that we have. So to me, I had to really get on my being very tactical and being very diplomatic with them to say, you have all these leads. I need to explain to you what you're leaving on the table. I need you to understand what happens when you don't deal with your leads, when you don't call them back. When you talk about your competition and you talk about how you don't want people to go to your competition, if you do not get back to those leads, they are going elsewhere and you're not going to be able to win them back.
Is that what was happening, though, in those 7 days? Was there a way to measure that, or did you know that was happening?
You know what? No, not in the first 7 days, because within 7 days, a lot of times it was okay, we'd be able to get back to somebody. But what was happening was those other leads sitting in the pipeline. So we talk about 7 days before somebody gets back to them. And then I said, we have 1,000 leads sitting in the pipeline. So after 7 days, maybe we've emailed those leads, but we haven't called them or we haven't actually talked to
Mhm.
them directly. Those people were going elsewhere. Those people, what I saw, and I can't quantify how many people went to competitors, but I can tell you that a lion's share of them were ghosting the company at that point. They couldn't get a hold of them after that.
Yeah, they get pissed off.
They do. I
Excuse
think
my
about it
French
as
there.
a
They get angry.
consumer.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If I want to do business with you and I fill out a form or I send you an email or I call and leave you a message, and 7 days later, 14 days later, you get back to me with an email or you don't get back to me at all, I don't really want to do business with you. And why? Because I feel like that's how you're going to do business. If I need to get something done or I really want to get something to the finish line, how long is it going to take to get it there? How am I going to be able to have that interaction that I need with your company and that customer experience? If this is how long it takes for you to initially get back to me, this is how important I am as a customer. And that's really what they needed to understand.
Yeah, if you were a plumber or a HVAC, your furnace is out, you're not gonna wait 7 days. You're gonna call the
No,
next guy in line and the next and the next
absolutely.
until you get an instant call.
Yep,
And that goes for any kind of service business. And,
absolutely.
some of them are emergency kind of things. Some of them aren't as much, but how many times do you get a phone call when you sign up on a form on a website within the first 5 minutes?
Oh my
It's
gosh, sometimes in the first 30
rare.
seconds.
But it's very rare. There's about a statistic, there's 7% of all customers who have been studied in the recent study by, I think it was Gartner. Only 7% of customers respond within 5 minutes. 7%. So that's your competitive advantage.
Right,
That's an
absolutely.
advantage. So marketing is generating all these killer leads. How do they feel?
About marketing? Oh, marketing was so frustrated. That the
Yeah.
At that point, so I was consulting with them, but I was working as their fractional CMO, and the team was just like, "We need help every day. We need help." And I'm going, "I'm trying. You know what I'm doing? I understand we need this. We're building out these processes. Let's convince them this is the process. Let's put together a killer job description for lead coordination. Let's make sure that we are sending out the reporting. So we are not just letting people on the side when they want to look at the reports, look at them. We want to make sure that we are proactively going, hey, here's what's going on this week. This is how many leads we had drop in the pipeline this week. This is how many of them are qualified leads. This is how many we weren't able to get to." So I just said we need to really make sure that we are justifying why we need these positions and justifying what's going on. And if there's anything that I can do to help in between that we can do to bridge this, let's do it. And we did everything from layering on chat bots to making sure that there were automated texts going out saying that we were going to be back with you soon. But there's only so much you can do. So there was a lot of frustration.
Yeah, and that must have had a reflection on you because you're like a hired gun. You're the fractional CMO who's brought in to bring growth to the company.
Right.
And your hands are tied because the company is not responding to what you're providing, but yet it's on you. So how did that feel to you?
Of course, that was it was definitely frustrating. It was upsetting to me because you take these things personally. I really have a lot of passion in what I do, and we had these huge goals, and we were, as a marketing department, meeting the goals. And I was so excited about that. But on the other side of it, I was like, hey, you guys, you keep telling me it's content and it's the qualification of the leads, and that's not the issue. So I felt like it was a lot of just justify, and persuade. And it was frustrating. It was upsetting. And on the other side of it, when everybody was finally getting together to say this is a problem, very satisfying and rewarding, and made me feel like they could actually scale in the way that they wanted to. Because really, I will tell you, on the side of things, we were talking about things like 10xing the company. How do we 10x the company? And I'm going,
Yeah.
can't 10x the company if we don't go back to basics. We have to go back to the basics here, which is making sure that the processes are in line to be able to deal with the growth.
Yeah. And management doesn't really like to hear, leadership doesn't like to hear that. They don't like to hear that. They may run you out of the company because you're telling them that, which is a precarious position to be. I've been in that position and I was let go because I was in a company that wanted to quadruple them and we're at 50 million. And that was a great goal. And I was on board with it. I was on the executive team. But I warned them, I said, hey, the sales team that you brought in is selling stuff that we don't deliver. We're optimized for this. We need to have bulk, big logistics moves, not single shipments. If they had great opportunities in the single shipments, but our network couldn't handle it. They were optimized for large shipments. And I kept telling that we need to retool. Let's retool. I need resources here and here to be able to do that. And we need to develop or integrate systems that handle that. And we're going to need some staffing to handle it because they're micromanaging every single move instead of managing just the exceptions. So I've been in that position and I lost my position. In fact, I hired my team that replaced me, uh, which is which is what it happens, but it's
Absolutely.
one of the best things that could have ever happened to me though, because what I told them was going to happen did happen. And their company was devalued, morale suffered, vendor loyalty suffered, clients left, customer service went down. These are all things that happen in a company, in any company where you're not prepared for that kind of growth. And that did happen. And the company was sold a couple of times. And that's what happens. And the original leadership went, gosh, what happened? So they,
That's so true. And that ultimately, I think, is what happens a lot when you come in from a consulting or fractional standpoint. You have to really temper what you're pushing on, but it's your job to help them
yeah,
scale. And it's hard because you're between a rock and a hard place. You want to make sure, where I said you're diplomatic, and it's hard because they don't want to hear a lot of times those things that you have to say when it comes to growth, when it comes to what is preconceived in their minds. Like I said, if we get the leads, we're going to be successful. Oh, now the leads have come in and we're not successful. What's happening? This can't be that we can't handle it. The problem is, and I talk about this so much, is so many companies don't want to face the fact that there's this organizational alignment issue and dysfunction. And like I said, go back to basics. Go back to, let's look at who do we have on our executive team? Who do we have on our org chart that's reporting to people? What is everybody doing? And looking from the very basics of, what are we selling? who is our target, and how are we getting those leads and dealing with those leads so we can get those jobs and close them. It takes work and it takes a step back, and everybody is so busy and running like chickens with their heads cut off. Everybody is so reactive these days. Sometimes you have to take the step back and you have to take that time. I get it's not the fun, sexy thing to do in business to stop just pushing on that marketing machine and putting out those messages and driving forward, but it's the way you're going to drive forward. It's the way you're going to 10x, is making sure that you can handle the business that's coming in. It is wonderful to double, to triple, to get to meet those goals that you want to meet in business
Yeah.
and scale your business. But you need to make sure that there's some very foundational things in place so you can handle it, because you're not going to get there if those foundational things are not in place.
So let's get back to the 24-hour response time. What was your goal? And I know we said 7 days, but what was happening on the ground between that lead coming in and that?
What was happening on the ground
Um,
was that you had people that were responsible. So from the first line, you had a marketing coordinator who was responsible for all things marketing department, dealing with leads that came in. So he could be in an event, he could be hosting the podcast for the company, he could be doing any number of things that he had to do. He could be off. What happens when the person who's dealing with your leads is on vacation? That's the first thing. So you have one person responsible.
what did happen?
What did happen is exactly what I'm saying, is the leads were, a lead comes in. If he's there and he had the time, he would pick up the phone and call them right away. If he was away, it could be 3 days, 4 days, 6 days, 7 days. Once a week, he would try to send out an email to everybody that came in. And I kept saying, an email is not going to do it for the hot leads. These are hot leads we need to be on the phone with. Now, from him, he would go on, qualify. He was fantastic. If he was just solely the lead coordinator, he would have been fantastic. He understood the process. He helped to build it. And he really understood the entire sales process, because he had been trained to actually go out and give some of the sales presentations. So he was a great person to be able to talk to these leads. The next step from him was to send that qualified lead to the salesperson in their region. So there was a team of salespeople all over the country. So he would then send an email and make a phone call and let Joe Smith, Texas region coordinator or Texas region salesperson, know that they got a call. This is a qualified lead. He put all of the information in the CRM for them, give them kind of a rundown of what they talked about. Please call them back. Now, maybe Joe Smith is there. Maybe he's sitting in his car and he gets the message and he can call them. Maybe he's at home sitting at his desk. But what if he's at another presentation? Or what if the state of Texas is huge? He's 8 hours away at a presentation, has to get on a plane, isn't going to be back for a couple of days. You're looking at the same thing again that was happening with the lead coordinator. The salesperson was the one to talk to them as the next step, but they may not be there. They were doing their job and doing their sales presentations. Here's where the breakdown is. Everything was considered important. So it was important that the salesperson was doing their presentation and might not be there. It's important that the marketing coordinator was doing the marketing and might not be able to handle. Wasn't the reaction to the leads. There wasn't that priority of how important these leads were to be able to get right back to them. Oh, are we frozen? Oh, Paul, did I lose you? Oh, hello. Are you there?
Yeah, we got buffered there.
I saw that.
Yeah, I think it might be stabilized now, I hope. So we were talking about the handoff between the current marketing coordinator, who is basically responsible for a bunch of other things. His one of his umpteen responsibilities was to qualify and talk to, email and call the leads, which could happen right away or it could happen when he got around to it.
Right.
And then
Right.
he would hand it off to the appropriate sales rep. And I assume, and they were all different at different parts of the country. And the sales rep was in the same boat. Their primary responsibility was to do the sale, to do presentations.
Right.
Their primary responsibility was not to answer the phone and call leads,
Right.
response to leads. So there's dysfunction built into the process right there. And there's no malicious intent on either side,
No, absolutely.
but there's no visibility. They're blind to that. And so what happened next?
So this is where we came back and put in, the time to say, what are we going to do to deal with these leads? And that's where we put out a lead coordinator job description to hire a lead coordinator to deal with these leads. That was the next step, was getting a lead coordinator. So in the meantime, as we're waiting for the lead coordinator, the VP of sales and the chief revenue officer were the ones that started dealing with the leads. And you can imagine how that went. Everybody with good intentions too. So the lead, our marketing coordinator, would be the first line, send it off to one of them. And so it was working better because they were getting back to them quicker. And hey, what customer isn't excited to talk to somebody that's one of the heads of the company? So they were excited about it, and we were seeing a better conversion for sure, but still had the drop off if the salespeople were busy. Then tried really having some trainings with the salespeople. So we put together some trainings to how to deal with the leads. So in the meantime of waiting for this lead coordinator position and knowing that there was always going to be the handoff to the sales team, we put together some trainings on how to handle the lead. We sit the sales team down as a sales and marketing group. So marketing and sales train together because there's a level of credibility in who they're going to listen to at that point. They've got their leadership on there too. Marketing really did the training on the importance of the leads, how the leads were coming in, how the leads were structured, what they were doing to drive the leads. And then sales we're putting in this new process for here's the time frame for which let me go back a second. This is how you're going to get the lead. So they're going to come into the system. You're going to get an email immediately. As soon as anybody talks to this lead, you're going to get another email saying, this is a qualified lead. This is what we talked to the lead about. And then you're going to jump in and call them. And here's our expectation that you call them within 24 hours. And this is why. And it definitely was getting better. I will tell you, as things were getting better, the company decided as a whole to change their entire business plan and pulled back a bunch of marketing altogether so they could launch a new category and kind of tank the leads altogether at that point. But that being said, they were still hiring for the lead coordinator. They now had the new processes in place. So after the launch of this category, when they were going to spend on marketing again, they had processes in place as opposed to where they started before, which was just get leads and hope that they're going to convert and it doesn't matter when we talk to them.
So leadership sounds like they're a bit confused about who they are and what they were selling. How did that look to them when they came to that realization? There was a pivot there you just mentioned. I don't recall us talking about that.
We didn't. There was a pivot it was very recent, the pivot, where I talked about them wanting to 10x the company. They decided in order to 10x the company, they wanted to relaunch themselves as a leader in the category that they were in, but position themselves differently. So they were like the new innovators doing things differently. So they did something that I don't ever really suggest people do, which is pull back all their marketing spend to plan out the launch of the whole category and spend money on advertising the new category. And then they were going to put the spend back in place to be able to.
So is that when you left the company? Yeah. Yeah. How did that feel?
At that point, I felt like I talk to them. I get a lot of phone calls from them asking questions. I still help them on the side. There just wasn't much for me to be able to do. When we parted ways, I was still helping them on one side to write a book that they were putting out on their new category. And I felt like we had gotten to the point where when they spun the lead machine back up, they were in a much better position to deal with them. because like I
Mhm.
said, now we had put trainings in place. They were going to hire the lead coordinator. So they did not stop looking for a lead coordinator. So they were going to have a new position with the lead coordinator. They were getting very clear. So here's another thing is they were getting very clear around their messaging. So everybody was consistent and on the same page. So I do feel like now they're starting to spin up their marketing again. They're in a much better place. There's a lot less friction. There's a lot more kind of rinse and repeat processes. So I do believe that they are going to be much more successful this time around with dealing with their leads, thanks to going back and putting in that infrastructure.
Why do you think that they were so resistant to change? It took 3 months to change, and I don't know how much they spent on leads that were just wasting money on 3 months worth of leads, basically. Why did they wait so long?
I think there's a few things. When I came into the company, they had gone through multiple different people in the marketing department. They had gone through multiple COOs. They were dealing with some culture issues. And I think everybody was just like, we just need something to work here. And so we really believe that if we can get leads, then everything will just be okay. And so everybody had this belief in their head that the whole problem was we're not making enough money because we don't have the leads. So we don't have the business. With 6 leads, obviously, you don't really have a lot of people to convert. So I think in everybody's mind, it was like, just bring the leads and we're going to be okay. We have some great people
Mhm.
here, great salespeople. We have a great program. It's going to be okay. And like I said, and what you and I've talked about, which is until you start bringing in those leads, you're not really exposing what's going on. It started to expose that they didn't have the systems to deal with them. And I think that created another issue, which was between all of the turnover they had, they also had changed CRMs multiple times. When I had gotten there, they had just moved from a second CRM. So I helped them to put a new CRM that was going to work into place for them. We put a new website in place. And so I think they were really grappling with so much change, turnover, change in systems. And so what they really believed was going to happen didn't happen. And that's where I think the resistance came in.
And so, yeah, it sounds like they were throwing technology at the wrong problem. So they were trying to solve the wrong problem all along.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then came
Uh,
everybody who then, of course, is very protective of their teams and protective of their position, going, it's not my
mhm.
fault, it's not my fault. And really, when you start to expose those cracks, it's not a blame game. This stuff happens in companies. And
Yeah.
let's get the brightest here who are sitting on this leadership team together. And instead of blaming each other, let's figure out how you move forward. What is the answer? What is the fix? Not whose fault is it? Because at that point, it doesn't matter whose fault it is.
It's very true. And it sounds like they might have been, like you said, they're protective of their territories, even at the leadership level, not just the sales team and
Right.
marketing team. It was at the executive level. They were, like I said before, they were blind to what was really going on and they were solving the wrong problem. They're
Right.
trying to solve the wrong problem, but they didn't, sounds like they didn't clearly know who they were.
Correct.
But there's got to be a aligning to the cloud because they did get the systems in place. Unfortunately, you were displaced, but you learned some things from that. So what did you learn out of that one CMO, fractional CMO position working with them? What would you have done differently?
Um, I think what I would have done differently, what I know I would have done differently is not go in with the just marketing hat on. You're hired to be on the executive team, and you're hired to do marketing. Everybody's, what can we do? What are we doing wrong in marketing? How come we're not getting the leads? Really taking a step back to go, there are things that you need to do for marketing. And really, they needed a new website and they needed to get clear on their messaging and their target audience and all of that.
Hmm.
But make sure that everybody was aligned, not just work with the CEO who's saying, we need more paid ads, we need more social, we need to have better content and all that. Make sure to start asking the questions like, okay, how are we going to get this messaging to the sales team? When we bring in these leads, who's going to deal with it? Because I went in with the CMO hat on thinking it was really, they just needed marketing help because they had everybody else in place for sales. They had everybody that was already there for years dealing with their leads and their sale. But it really showed me you have to make sure no matter what you do, no matter what you put in place, that it's communicated across the company and that you understand how everything is being dealt with. Not just a CMO is a CMO, that's fine. But you have to make sure that you're aligned with everybody else from the other departments because marketing hits everybody. Sales hits everybody. You need your marketing to support your sales team. You need your sales team to support the growth of the company. And then obviously you need your operations. And so it's really important not to underscore the fact that everybody needs to be aligned and that you're a part of that.
Yeah. And as I was saying, that one position I was in, I was the CIO, Chief Information Officer, and I would always say, "Hey, marketing can't run operations.
Right.
We need to be in lockstep," and that wasn't happening. And even though I was on the leadership team, I had my hands full with the growth that was being thrown at us. If I would have done differently, was say, "Hey, wait a minute. These are the areas that I see that need to be looked at." And I did do that. And what they wanted to do is bring in new software. And when they did bring it in, they spent like $35,000 on this new software.
Of course.
And we already had a system that was running fine. And I said, before you do that, let's do a gap analysis because blah, 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 blah. These things aren't going to work. You're going to need this and that to be able to do that.
Right.
And it fell on deaf ears because these new salespeople were the greatest things since sliced bread, and they have a great story and all that. And what happened is once they started getting these clients, they said, "Hey, Paul, can you integrate with this system because it's not doing this?" And I said, "This is what I told you. Yeah, we can, but why don't we just use what we have and add this function onto it?" And at that point, it's beyond hope. And leaders can get overrun by growth, and then
Absolutely.
they make bad decisions,
Right.
or they can't deal with it. And so for me, it was a leadership pressure that I couldn't rise to because everything was coming so fast at me. And I know you've probably experienced the same thing.
Absolutely.
Um, but yeah, they didn't know where the hell they were going. They were blind to the problem. But like you said, they probably are doing better now. Do they
Right.
have a new CMO?
They don't. They're
Yeah.
still I still talk to them they call me for marketing things.
I hope you charge them.
I do, of course.
Yeah.
Make my money, but unfortunately, I feel like they're not on their own with this stuff. There's other companies, like you said, that this is happening with. I've seen many other companies, they're just not, they want the growth so bad. And they feel in their mind there's a way to get there but they've skipped over the processes. They haven't done that gap analysis. They haven't thought
Yeah.
out what the ramifications are going to be if they move too fast, if they get too much business too quickly. It's all about like, how do we increase that bottom line? How do we get that revenue? And so I see this happening to so many companies. And then that friction comes in and everybody's fighting with everybody, and you have to go back and get that alignment. I really think with all of these companies, my hope is that especially the people in leadership realize that it starts from the top and that sometimes you just need to go back to basics and say, are we ready for this? We want this growth. We're
Mhm.
doing really well, or we're not doing really well. And this is why, if we're going to put new systems in place, new messaging, all this money out there, do we have what we need from a people standpoint, an alignment standpoint, a software standpoint to deal with the business that comes in to get to where we need to be without having to take a step back?
Yeah. I think obviously I have a podcast called the Lead Machine Growth Show. So I'm all about growth. I think the faster you grow, it's an advantage because you will see where your fracture points are, where your friction is, where the leaks are, if you're vigilant.
Absolutely.
If you're not, you could get overrun and have to take a step back. But
That's such a good point. You do have to be vigilant. That's the thing is you can run fast. You can be prepped for
yeah,
those leads, but you do have to be vigilant. You do have to keep your eye on the ball and you do have to realize, I think it's part of that introspection of realizing if you're going to run fast, things are going to be exposed, things are going to happen, new things will come up. So you have to be ready to deal with it. Change happens, going to happen all the time. You need to be flexible. You need to be nimble. You need to realize that you're going to have to make changes when you want to grow. and you want to grow quickly, then you can do it. But you have to realize it is not, here you go, we're going to throw the money at it. The people will come. We will book. We will make revenue. No, it's not how that works. So you have
Yeah.
to be vigilant and you have to be flexible and you have to be ready to make those moves. That's even as with leads, as leads are coming in. Are the leads qualified? Maybe the leads don't seem qualified. You need to make a shift there. There's so many things that everybody needs to not stay stuck in their tunnel vision of this is how we're going to get there, because it's a windy road. It is not a straight path.
Yeah. And we're talking about a bigger company, obviously, but this goes right down to the solo entrepreneur who's an owner operator that's doing it themselves. This same thing applies. If you want to grow, then you have to have build the processes into the sales process, the onboarding process, the delivery of service, all those financials, all those processes that are the blocking and tackling and the basics, fundamentals of doing business have to be in place. And if you hate doing financials, then you need to get someone to help. If you hate marketing, get someone to help you do that, so that you're not doing that. So no matter if you're big or small, growth will show and expose where your weaknesses are.
Yes.
And you can respond very quickly by getting help.
Absolutely.
And talking to people like Lindsay Ellis and myself and others can help you navigate those growth waters. So Lindsay, how can people learn more about you? I know that you have a book that sounds pretty interesting. Can you tell
I
us
do
about
go
that?
Leader, the No Suck Leadership Manifesto. It helps those current and aspiring leaders. It's a little more of a standpoint from what not to do as a leader as opposed to just what to do. It's got the what not to do and what to do. It has some fun anecdotal stories in there and some real life
Mhm.
examples of things that have happened. But really for those current and aspiring leaders to help with their growth. I also have a website, beyondordinaryleadership.co. And on there, there is a leadership alignment quiz. So as we've been talking about alignment issues, you can go on there and download the leadership alignment quiz to see how well your leadership team is aligned. There is a Beyond the Ordinary Leader workbook to help with leadership development and growth. And then all of my contact information is also on the website. Feel free to contact me. I'm always happy to help companies, consult with companies on alignment and help them get through this friction, because everybody
Yeah.
wants to grow and they need the leads, but they also need to make sure they're aligned. Happy to help them whatever way that I can.
Yeah, so make sure you check out Beyond the Ordinary Leader, the No Suck Leadership Manifesto. It's available on Amazon, I assume, and
Yes.
at your favorite bookstore. And ship.co is where you can connect with Lindsay. You probably are on, I'm sure you're on LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
So growth doesn't usually break businesses, it reveals what's already broken.
Correct.
Lindsay shared a powerful example of how operational dysfunction, which I love that, can hide in plain sight until success forces everyone to confront it, which you help them do. So as we sign off, remember faith and action go hand in hand. So keep the pedal to the metal until next time on the Lead Machine Growth Show. I'm Paul Guine and Lindsay Ellis. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.